Well, hello and welcome to part 6 of Starting Over. I was talking to a friend of mine a couple of days ago, and he said that maybe the title of it should be How to Make the Second Half of Your Life Better Than the First Half. I thought that was a pretty good idea. But we're going to continue on with the concepts of starting over and some of the ways that I'm looking at it and some of the things that I'm interested in. A couple of days ago, I put up Emoto's video on water crystals, and there seemed to be a pretty strong response of people sharing that video, liking that video, and just being impressed by the concept, which it's kind of hard not to be when you see how the energy of love and kindness and gratitude can form these beautiful water crystals. And then just the opposite happens when hate or envy or any other negative emotion is applied, that it destroys those water crystals. So it's a very interesting video. And I read the book 15 years ago, I think, in the early 2000s. And to me, it's just proof again of God and science merging on the concept of things that we already know, that good affects us in a good way and that bad affects us in a bad way. But here's scientific proof that this is possible and that it's a good thing. Really, when I look at the concept of God and science and the Bible and all of those things, I'm kind of an oddity among a lot of my friends because I believe that there is a great place for science in our lives, because really what science is doing is discovering and revealing God's design, God's plan, things that God has already created. They're not inventing anything, they're not creating anything, they're just discovering. So why wouldn't that have a valid place? And yet most people see it as science versus God, or science and God. But even if you have science and God where you're trying to merge the two, you're still considering them as separate entities, separate parts. The way I see it and the way I approach the concept of looking at these things is God is first, God's on the top, and then below that is God's creation, and then below that is science discovering God's creation. So that they're all one part, one package, they're all one piece. That's the way it works for me. That's the way I see it and understand it. And I don't believe there's a conflict between science and the scriptures. And in order to go back and see where a lot of this stuff came from, I believe that we have to look at big picture perspective. So I want to take a few minutes to go through that and show you a perspective that I have on it, and then let you make your own decision. In the mid-1500s, Copernicus developed a telescope, and as he observed the heavens and was watching over things, he realized that from his conclusions and observations that the sun was the center of the universe. Well, at that time, the church was saying that the earth was the center of the universe. Well, and it made logical sense, of course, if God created the earth and put us on the earth, and we had to be the center of the universe, didn't we? Well, there was scientific information that Copernicus had that said it wasn't so. He published his book on this information the same year that he passed away, which probably was fortunate for him, I guess, because the church declared him a heretic and his doctrine heresy, that the sun was the center of the universe. That couldn't be, because we were on the earth and God's creatures were on the earth. So the earth had to be the center. Well, in 1610, Galileo, another scientist and researcher, developed a better telescope, and he came up with more proof that the sun indeed was the center of the universe. And he had evidence to back it up. Well, then it became in 1632 Galileo versus the Catholic Church, because they declared it once again heresy. And so it sort of divided the camp, and it came religion against science, or church against science, and then it equated into God against science. And that's how it has kind of been and was at that time. Then in 1688, Newton, Sir Isaac Newton, developed the supreme telescope, I guess you could say, and he had empirical proof that the sun indeed was the center of the universe, and it couldn't be debated. Still, it wasn't until 1822 that the Roman Catholic Church finally admitted that yes, the sun is the center of the universe. Being ignorant to all those things prior, even regardless of the proof, just denying it, saying that it couldn't be so. But the church didn't want to lose its power or control over thought and truth, and so it stood its ground until it couldn't do it anymore. So Copernicus and Galileo and Newton didn't create anything. They didn't invent anything. They didn't change anything. All they did was observe God's creation and God's design and try to explain it as it was. The Bible doesn't teach about gravity. The Bible doesn't teach about physics or math or quantum physics. It doesn't teach those things. So does that mean that they don't exist? Do we take the stance of the leadership of the early church and say, well, they can't be in existence because we don't say that they are, they're not recorded in the Bible? Well, the real showdown came in 1859 when Darwin published his book, Origin of Species. This caused a lot of conflict because the church's domination and control over truth and reality looked like it had a crack in it. Because Darwin's information that he gathered seemed to say that evolution was the true science, that evolution was the way that it happened, and that man wasn't created at one time and one point and one place and moved on from there. And so Darwin's theory then seemingly put a hole in the concept of what was accepted as truth in the religious realm of that day. And there was nobody that could reconcile what Darwin found, which he had evidence of, and what the scripture said. Nobody could put those together. And so it became a very divided camp of science versus religion. And all those lines have been drawn and are still the same ever since. But here is the problem. Here's the main problem that came about. Darwin had no access to the DNA helix. We've only in the last, however many years in science have been able to unfold and reveal the complex design of the DNA helix. And there is evidence, scientific evidence now, that does prove that man was created complete and instantly at one point in time. Now, I'm not going to get into all the details of it. You can go look up Greg Braden's series on the missing link, and he has all the scientific empirical evidence of how all this is true and how it happened. And it takes the whole evolution concept out of the concept of man. Maybe in plants, maybe in animals, some things happened, but not in the species of man. So you can look that up if you like. But the whole point of this is that Darwin opened the door to set science in opposition to religion or God. And that's a lie. It was never designed to be that way. It should never have been that way. It should never have been considered in that light. Everything science discovers, God created. All right, that's the order of it. The things that they discover, they didn't invent, they didn't put there, they didn't place there. They just observed them, they see them, they explain them. So everything that is discovered, God created. Now, here's the concept that you got to think about, and here's again the logic of the whole process. The Bible, even though because it doesn't talk about, as I said, physics and math and quantum physics and gravity and science and all those, how could it? How many volumes of books would it take to explain the details of God's creation? Even in the scriptures itself, it says that the world could not contain the volumes of books just in the accounts of Jesus Christ while he was here on earth. So how could God explain the intricacies of the connection between animals and plants and humans and climate and the electromagnetic field of the earth? How could all of that be explained in the Bible? It obviously can't. So things have to be considered. Things have to be looked at. How could we not look and be interested in finding out what else God has created in this, place that we live, in this creation that we live? How could we not want to find out everything that God has made available to us to live this life in a more fantastic and fabulous way? Einstein's quoted as saying, "Science without religion is lame, and religion without science is blind." So what did God create? What is his plan? What is his design for our lives so that we can live more fully, more completely in a better way? George Washington Carver discovered over 300 products from the peanut, just from the peanut plant, and he credits God with leading him on this journey. Now, all those 300 products aren't covered in the scriptures, but God led George Washington Carver on this discovery of all that could be developed and all that could be made out of one plant, and interesting thing, Carver didn't discover peanut butter. So he discovered everything else but peanut butter. And so, that's pretty interesting in itself. But the fact that in one element of God's creation, so many things could be manifested that man never even could conceive of until that time. What else is out there? That's what I want to find out. That's what I want to be a part of. Love, believing, consciousness, our will, our understanding of emotions and feelings, all of these things impact our lives. All of these things impact our lives to make them better. You want the second half of your life to be better than the first half? Then you can join me for 2 months, starting next Tuesday, April 4th. For 2 months, we're going to spend time finding out exactly what it takes to start over and to make the second half of your life better than the first half. There's a link above this video that you can click on to get an application and find out more about it. So if you want to be a part of that, then please click on it and find out. I'll be talking more about these things as time goes on, but for today, that's what we have. So enjoy your day, and we'll talk to you later.